Using AI to scale personalization is really the future. The less expensive that these API calls become into these LLMs, you're going to see personalization be something that's not lagged. It can happen in real time for pennies on the dollar.
Expect 60% of that list to go in the trash. And that's not where to go dig for your gold, right?
Welcome to the DesignRush Podcast. I'm your host, Kia Johnson. In today's episode, I'm joined by two powerhouse leaders shaping the future of B2B growth. Brian Minick, COO of ZeroBounce, and Keryn Gold, CEO of Lead with Gold. We go deep on what really drives results in cold outreach today. And spoiler, it's not better email copy. It's clean data, intentional segmentation, and AI with guardrails. Brian shares what day zero ROI looks like when you clean your list before you hit send, while Keryn unpacks how behavioral intelligence and clarity transform performance even for lean teams. Whether you're a founder, GTM leader, or RevOps pro, this episode is a must listen. Catch the full conversation on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Want to be featured? Email us at spotlight@designrush.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more insights from the front lines of modern marketing. Hi, Brian and Keryn. Welcome to the DesignRush Podcast. It is so wonderful having you here with us today. I'm looking very forward to this discussion. I think we're going to be expanding quite a bit here. I hope you're both doing well.
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Happy to be here.
Amazing. Okay, so Brian, I'm going to start out with you first and just kind of like pick your brain a little bit. You know, cold outreach is getting harder, right? So, I mean, email providers like Google and Yahoo are actually tightening restrictions. Would you say that the death of cold outreach is in sight?
So this is a great question. I think a very relevant topic. I don't think it's coming to a kind of end point. I think it's actually just rapidly changing. And so what I'm seeing is that more and more companies, there are still people being successful with cold outreach. Now, what they're not successful on is a spray and pray type methodology. That's not what's going to work. But I am seeing a lot more kind of taking this type of data and doing more with it. So creating omni-channel out of it, creating multiple touch points out of it. And that's really the key to do this. If you're just planning to do it through cold outreach of email, that is not going to work for you. It'll be very hard, cause lots of problems. But no, I don't think it's on the way out. I think what's happening is the Google, Yahoos of the world are trying to make sure that the messages people are receiving are intentional, personalized, and targeted. And, you know, I don't think that it's coming to a point where they're just going to block everything. I think they just want to make sure their job is to put the correct messages in front of their customers, and their customers are end users or the recipients for these people. And so they should block bad actors. They should block people who are spraying and praying and buying bad data. I completely agree with that. But account-based marketing is another kind of good one where it can touch on that. And you're targeting. And so I don't think it's on the way out. I think it's pivoting rapidly.
Then would you say that you think these changes are then actually forcing brands to rethink then how they connect with their potential customers? I kind of see where this running thread is going right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the more enforcement that's happening with sender requirements, the ever-changing kind of characteristics of what's happening to get into the inbox. Yeah, I think it's absolutely, turning into something that it can't just be email. And I think that is the concept. Is it's also retargeting, it's also messaging, it's also, a lot of different components, and it's brand awareness as well. So a lot of people won't ever respond to a cold email, but that doesn't mean that they didn't see the brand name and that they didn't see something that caught their eye.
Keryn, I want to go over to you and find out, you've spoken about using AI with intention, but are you also seeing real results when it comes to boosting conversion rates and outreach?
Yeah, absolutely. If it's used with clarity, if there are clear goals and success metrics, if you're segmenting right, if you're optimizing messaging for clarity, if you're leveraging behavioral intelligence and AI to do your A/B testing and some of the follow-up automated sequencing, you can see multiple fold lift in engagement and conversion rates for some clients.
Now, just what's your honest take on spin tax? Is it actually useful for scaling personalization?
Yeah, I mean, I think using AI to scale personalization is really the future. It's going to reduce your cost, your customer acquisition cost, and it really, the more that and less the less expensive that these API calls become into these LLMs, you're going to see personalization be something that's not lagged. It can happen in real time for pennies on the dollar. So right now, it's something that's cost prohibitive for many, but being able to personalize with AI is something that's kind of near term within the next year, something that is coming. But for now, really just having AI inform next best action really cuts some manual prospecting time and can, like I said, increase lift and conversion rates multiple fold.
Brian, I see you nodding your head quite a bit there. Do you have maybe
Yeah.
anything you'd like to add? Yeah.
I think it's just also about people are taking too much at face value of these type of data points they're getting. And I'm still, so, I'm a chief operating officer. I have lots of employees that have come and go over the years, right? And thankfully, we've retained great employees, but I've had people leave the company, right? And so some of those pieces of mail are still coming to me. I am still getting cold prospect emails to an employee who's left 7 years ago. Okay. And so if you think that's going to work, I mean, who's done the research? This is my point, right? Is like, if you're going to do it right. Go research who you actually, do they have a LinkedIn profile? This person's had 4 jobs since ZeroBounce, by the way, for the record. And so it just shows me you've done absolutely nothing besides grab a list of some sort from some place, ZoomInfo or wherever. And I'm not knocking them, but some of these systems, and you're just spraying and praying and you're hoping for the best. And that's what's going to cause you problems. And that's not where to go dig for your gold, right? To kind of touch on the title here. The digging for the gold is, that's a starting point, that list. Then take it and break it down. And my best kind of recommendation on that is expect 60% of that list to go in the trash. Generally speaking, 40 to 60% of that list is garbage, and you need to sift through that. And sometimes that takes manual effort, or maybe AI is at that point where they can actually start to do that, which actually would be a great tool to break some of that out.
Well, I'm curious to find out from you, why do you think organizations are doing this? Do you think it's maybe just they're lazy, or is it that they're really struggling? Yeah.
So I think it's a couple things. I think that number one, there's not enough education on this type of concept. And what's happening is, generally the way this works, and I've seen this countless times, you start this process and things look good. Reply rates are high because you haven't done this in the past. You haven't burned your reputation, to whatever label you want to put on that one, but you haven't burned your reputation up and your emails go into the inbox. And then people say, well, this is working, this is great. And either A, they just continue, which eventually the results will start to dwindle down. And so the question that I think is so important, that is commonly overlooked, is when it dwindles down, they don't ask themselves why. What they say is, I need more. And so they play the statistics game. And it's, all right, well, if my reply rates are 1%, and let's throw 10x the amount of contacts in there, and we'll get our results back to where we were, just with more contacts. You're pushing a boulder uphill, and it's going to absolutely come back and fall on top of you and crush you. And so the difference is to pause and to understand what's going on, take a step back. Sometimes that actually means slowing down, by the way. And it's just so commonly overlooked. And by the way, I don't blame anybody. I think salespeople are naturally driven for sales. That's what they're thinking about. And that's generally what cold outreach is about, one way or another, right? Book a meeting, get a prospect demo, whatever it is, but it's essentially a sale. And, they keep thinking, if I throw more at it, the number will come up. And it's just really not the case. It's really about quality. It's not about quantity. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I preach about is quality over quantity, give you better results.
Keryn, your head is bobbing around. Do you want to maybe also add something there? Are you in agreement with Brian?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it really does. It's what you both said. It's back to basics and getting that clarity, because it is. If you're operating off of bad data, it's garbage in, garbage out, and you're going to stop landing in the inbox. You're going to end up in a situation where you're going to people's spam folders and you aren't a trusted source of information anymore. So, I think that just getting that clarity, going back to basics, is key.
Yeah. Brian, my next question to you, I want to find out, when clients come to you, what would you say is the core problem that they're actually trying to solve, even if they don't say it directly? I mean, what would you say they end up relying on you for the most? Yeah.
Yeah. So at ZeroBounce, we do email validation and deliverability. So our goal is to make sure you have clean data and that it reaches the inbox when you send to your campaigns. And so the core problem that I'm seeing is, especially in the B2B world, is the amount of data churn that's happening. And so whether it's you want to email your whole customer base, there's a lot of churn happening, especially right now with what's going on and over the past few years with what's taken place across the world. But the primary core and general thing that we're doing is removing those bad contacts, removing the risky emails that have the ability to cause you deliverability problems and not be into the inbox and be in the spam folder. So that is, generally speaking, the primary core is removing the bad contacts. So you have that clean data, that good data, and whether you're a sales rep grabbing that list, you still need to clean that up, or you have a customer base or you're a marketer and you've been emailing for years, there's still lingering bad data in there.
Keryn, for yourself, I mean, within the agency space, what would you say are the steps that you are taking to position your value to stand out as like a trusted strategic advisor?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I operate on value and impact. Like I said, everything's ROI based. I work with businesses on contingency and I'm paid out of the revenue or savings generated. So there's a guaranteed multifold first year ROI on all my work. I also believe in true partnership. So I share my profits rather 50-50 with people who refer me business. And so most of my business ends up coming through referrals and repeat customers. So, like I'm not a big social media person, but I am kind of a compulsive helper and just want to empower as many people and companies as I can to achieve these goals that they once thought were out of reach and overcome challenges that they once thought were insurmountable. AI has leveled the playing field. It's really enabling businesses and individuals to achieve 2 to 10x in the same amount of time without burnout if it's being leveraged correctly. So it's just such a transformational period. So for me, because I'm very driven by partnership and empowerment, again, for me business, whether it's a business who seeks to reduce costs without layoffs or reduction in product service quality, or if they refer someone to me who wants to learn how to use AI to achieve this at work, being able to do that without burnout, powered by AI. Again, like I do profit sharing and do everything on an ROI basis just because it's aligned incentives. And so again, big on win-wins.
Brian, do you have anything to add there?
No, I mean, the win-win's huge. I think, and clean data comes with that too, by the way, in the sense of you're paying to store all of this bad data across all these various systems. And so generally speaking, how we kind of create that win-win is, I call it ROI on day zero. So the way that we create kind of day zero ROI is by making sure that these bad emails or kind of problematic emails are not living in all of your systems. And so what I'm commonly seeing, especially as people are migrating systems, whether that's CRMs, ESPs, new tools, whatever it might be, they bring all of this bad data with them. And that can be cleaned up as you move from system to system. And it should be cleaned up, by the way, while you're in that system, just for the record. But an amazing time to do it is when you switch a system. And the concept here is that there's so many contacts that you're moving over and actually paying for the storage or the marketable contact, if you want to call it that. But in reality, you don't actually want to send emails to those people. And so it's an easy way to create kind of day zero ROI.
Keryn, over to you now. I want to find out, cold outreach. I mean, it's a full system, right? So you've got data collection, segmentation, copy, timing, follow-up, and optimization. Now, when one breaks that down, where have you seen AI actually make the biggest impact in this workflow?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, similar to Brian's point, the list hygiene and the ideal client profile definition, AI can clean and enrich and score leads. It can do so very quickly. It can optimize copy for those leads and content for those leads. And, it really just makes it so that as long as it's built on that clean foundation that Brian mentioned, you can reduce that manual oversight dramatically, save money, dynamically rewrite messages based on the lead's behavior and sentiment. It can really improve response rates and reduce customer acquisition cost.
In your experience, you're talking about cleaning a list, basically redefining the ICP, doing the cleaning of these lists, or like improving how you segmented leads, has this ever led to a measurable lift in performance? I mean, do you have perhaps any examples that you can point to regarding that? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And we practice this in our own business, right? So we're a B2B company, regardless that we are somebody that, people might have interest on this topic, but we are also a B2B company and we sell to businesses. And what I have found is that segmentation is so underrated. It is not talked about enough. It is not kind of drilled into enough. And I understand it's a resource kind of constraint. And sometimes, usually that's what I hear. It's like, well, I don't have the resource, or the tech team's doing this. But I said, as we went and moved to a new system, I said, hey, we are going to take every data point we have and we're going to push it into that system. And that has allowed us to slice and dice our customer base, prospect base in so many different degrees. And I'll give it real examples here. For example, somebody that has purchased and is a common purchaser, maybe they have a purchase frequency of every week. The message we send to them is very different versus somebody that purchased 6 months ago and then just came back to the website. In real time, we know exactly, think about that. That is a totally different message. That's a very, very different message, right? And then what about the person who's been playing with the calculators, playing with the site, but never really moved forward? That's, again, a very different message. And so the one, I'll give you real examples. The ones that are going in and buying every week, we present to them, hey, can you leave us a review? Hey, do you want to be an ambassador for ZeroBounce? Because you clearly love the product, right? You can't send that to the person that's never purchased. And when you don't do segmentation, and I'm giving you one of thousands of segmentation points that we can kind of create based on the workflows. So to me, it's such an underrated tool. It feels way more personalized. To me, personalization, segmentation are married. They are a marriage. And if you're not using both together, then how are you really kind of objectively getting to a goal? Because you are just sending the same message to everyone. And that is one of the biggest problems I see when people think email marketing doesn't work. No, you can't have 60,000 recipients on your list and send 60,000 recipients the same emails every single time. It doesn't work. It might work for a newsletter. That's it.
Yourself, Keryn, do you have anything to add to that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. For me, again, it comes back to clarity. I know I'm a broken record on this, but having clear goals, like what do you actually want to achieve from this person, from this group of people? You design your outreach and your copy around that, and you end up seeing lift, whether it's your email marketing or whether you're digging into data. My background is on the data science side as well. And just asking the question of where can we find revenue? Where can we save costs? And kind of being open-minded and open-ended about that question and digging into data. For one retail client of mine, we ended up saving over $40 million per year by finding a policy abuse that had gone overlooked, that then closing that loophole led to them saving over $40 million. It's having that willingness to say, okay, what are our end goals from this person? When we're talking about email marketing with one client, just defining the ICP and, like you were talking about, having clear segmentation and the goals for that group very clearly defined, and then having AI help inform the copy for that as well. That small change, by having things focused on the customer's behavior or their specific pain points and their goals, and having the outreach be based on that rather than their demographics, you see 4 or 5 times higher sales qualified leads and higher conversion rates. I mean, it's remarkable, just that little shift in, taking into account that behavioral intelligence rather than just the demographics and their behavior. You're talking multiple fold increased yield.
Brian, do you have anything else you'd like to add onto this point?
I mean, I think we nailed it. It's really, it's about being intentional and making sure that it resonates. And maybe another tip for the business people here, when we're doing B2B, stop thinking with your business and think about your customer and reverse it, right? And so how would you receive this? Not how should I send it? How do I feel when I read this? Not did this accomplish our goal, right? You have to switch your hat.
I mean, when you're working, with these kinds of businesses, there's often limited time, budget, or in-house tech support. So how do you design AI or data solutions that are actually usable day to day?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Lots of thoughts and strategies there. It really depends on how bought into AI they are. So again, I'm big on meeting people where they are. and really trying to understand their pain points, what's keeping them up at night, and trying to deliver solutions that have the greatest impact and ROI for them. So, I usually, if they're not fully bought into AI, I'll propose a 30 to 90 day pilot with very clear upfront expectations and success metrics to be able to just demonstrate the power. So, one thing that I like to do, and it's just so I'll ask it as a question to see, and obviously there's going to be a range based on the average employee pay, but if you had to just ballpark it, what would you estimate per employee per year the amount of money is lost to unnecessary status meetings that could have been an email, dashboard, etc.? What would be your guess? Average company, again, big ranges, what have you, depending on the employee salary. What would be your guess as the amount lost per year per employee just for status meetings?
22K. That's what's coming to my head. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's billions of dollars per year overall, but on a per employee basis, it's $35,000 per employee per year. Think about how much of your time you spend just with status meetings, whether it's a manager, a leader, an ICP, and it's crazy, $35,000 per. So with that in mind, one of the things that I've always done with my teams and I always do with my clients is really set up these solutions to try to automate that. Nobody likes status meetings. It's not fun. If you want to have a one-on-one with your people, then being able to have that one-on-one be about, again, it's pain points. How do I help unblock you? How do I resolve your pain point? Not, how many days is it going to take you to do this thing that could have been in an email or dashboard, right? So, for small and medium businesses or big companies, being able to really get rid of those status update meetings, $35,000 per employee per year saved, and you can have AI agents really collect, and I'm not talking AI agents like necessarily your standard chatbot, but you can essentially train one to say, where are you on these projects? What do you want to stop, start, and continue this week? What is your understanding of your current goals and how that aligns with organizational goals? And kind of where are you on these projects? And it can prompt that, and it can essentially be a weekly meeting with an AI chatbot that then collects this information, has this in a universal store, is queryable by managers and leaders, or could feed an automated dashboard so that if an executive level dashboard, so all those insights that usually, there's a lag for managers getting the information. It's not necessarily there when they need it. It's not necessarily actionable. Is all centralized. There's alignment on goals or goals up, all that stuff. That's one really quick win that can be empowering and unlock time and energy and autonomy and flexibility for everybody in the organization. So that's one that even with folks that aren't really fully bought into AI, I really like to do. And then, if they're more bought in, there's additional things that I like to do, which I can go into if you want, but I'll pause there.
So first comment is I got to go back to the balance sheet. Thanks. On status meetings.
Are you doing a lot of status meetings?
I mean, I think every business does some. I mean, no one can say they didn't do that. We have to. But I think it's a good point. And one of the things that we talk about internally, so we're forward thinking on AI, I would say, and it's something that we certainly appreciate. We see it as an aid, not as replacements for a lot of stuff. And one of the things that we've asked all the time internally, and if you go dig up the problem, which I'm sure Keryn's going to just shake her head and say, this is it. We say, what would happen if we increased our price by 10% tomorrow? And what would happen if we decreased our price by 30% in this range on this type of subscription level? And it is impossible to get to these answers, by the way. Impossible is the wrong word. It's multiple people, departments, it's a meeting, it's a spreadsheet, it's a BI tool, whatever you want to call it. But by the way, by the time they present the data, it's already changed. And so that to me is the killer is, let's say I want to run this project in March, and by April it gets done and it's finished and presented, the data's changed. And so I have always been a big kind of advocate of this and try to get into how can we query and get almost business type answers in response. That to me is a gold mine for any business to want to take advantage of.
Loving that. Keryn, you want to add something there?
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's actually my kind of next level is exactly that. That was a great lead in. I love it. But it's
Amazing.
so true. It's you want these canary in the coal mine, measures and insights and things like that. And to your point, by the time you're getting insights, you've already moved on, and it's not helpful. So especially with small and medium businesses, having simple, intuitive interfaces and automated data cleaning and processes, these self-correcting workflows requiring minimal maintenance and no extensive training are really important on the SMB side. But again, it goes back to clean data. I'm a big advocate of single source of truth. One place for all the data, very simple wraparounds to be able to say, okay, here's where the data lives. You can use AI to go in and clean that data. More than 90%, the Anthropic CPO, the people behind the Claude, recently came out and said that, right now, by the end of this year, over 90% of all code is going to have been written by AI. There's a reason for that. Right. And this is true when you're talking about data cleaning and database design as well. You need to have a clear centralized database, right? You have to have clarity of what questions you want to answer with that data, and the timeliness of those answers, to your point, Brian. What data you need to collect, how it needs to be structured. You can use AI to create clear must be trues and must not be true guardrails of what you want to achieve, and then have the AI agent analyze the existing data stores and the goals together, the dependencies and the code repositories, and then clean it, propose a new rebuilt single source of truth data structure that can answer those questions on those timeframes, annotate it, create the code to keep it updated, refactor all the code that's leading to that, because you have all these analyses built over it, and they may be different between team to team, which I find a lot. Every analyst will give you a different answer and has different codes to analyze it, which is just so much fun.
Keryn, I want to find out from you, what's the difference between the agency relationships that actually drive results and the ones that fall flat?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, winning partnerships tie fees to ROI and actual impact. You share data, you have a goal and purpose, and you have goal and purpose clarity. The ones that fail have misaligned incentives, right? No clear goals, no upfront success metrics, misaligned expectations. Just when you have reactive processes and fire drills rather than systems at work, that's kind of how that happens. Outputs are not the same as impact. Just information does not lead to ROI. So when you have aligned incentives, you have clarity, and you create win-wins for everybody.
Definitely. So my next question is actually to both of you. Brian, if you can start it off. The question is, I would like to find it from you, with AI now being used to write email copy and obviously personalize, sequences at scale and even sort lead data in real time. What emerging use cases do you think will quietly reshape how SMBs actually run their outreach and their marketing over the next year?
Yeah, so I think it touches a little bit on what I previously was chatting about on that segmentation side. I mean, the power of automating your segments and the messaging, if it's done properly and it's targeted properly, I don't know how much more of a machine you can create. I mean, I think you absolutely need the people behind it to make sure and vet it. I'm a big believer in that with AI. I don't believe it's a replacement. I believe it's an aid, and that you still need people to manually check and make sure that this is working as you intend. But for them to also identify, the AI tools to identify what segments you actually should create is another concept. And that this is just where I think everything will start to go. But from someone who has implemented AI, I also do know there's hallucination that is happening in these systems. And I really just want to encourage people to not just throw all the eggs in the basket and say we're done. There needs to be checks in place. There needs to be reviews. And so again, just going to reinforce, this is not a replacement of people. It is an aid to be smarter, faster, more intelligent, possibly and hopefully. But it does need oversight. I don't think it can be on self-managed.
Yeah, no, 100%. AI definitely hallucinates. There are huge pitfalls that can negatively impact brand. Being able to have clear guardrails, this is one of the things that I reinforce for all my clients. Clear must be trues and must not be trues. Really, really critical. It's if you don't set those for AI, it'll do it for you, and you're not going to like where you end up. It's like having a Ferrari with no going as fast as you can with no roadmap. So yeah, no, it's critical to have those must be trues and must not be true guardrails. This is also where agentic AI shines. OpenAI actually just released within the last week a guide to how to implement agentic AI with single and multi-agent systems. You can think of agentic AI kind of like a manager and a director over the individual AI processes. So it's essentially checking the work of every individual process. So you could have one process that cleans, another that writes copy and things like that. And you can have a manager layer, an agent, over each one of those that essentially is checking the work and quality to make sure it's not hallucinating. So one of your guardrails can be, this has to be verifiable from, a source that has a live link, like this has to be something that, yeah. So you can build that in as part of your manager agent layer kind of quality checks. But yes, like having human in the loop is still very necessary. As AI gets smarter and we have more reasoning, AIs like O3 and, some of the Gemini builds as well, you actually have a verifiable chain of logic that you can follow. So it's not just black box. You can actually see the sources it's getting information from and where, and you can make sure those sources are what you want it to be. But it's really critical to do that. But to answer your question about, like the quiet use cases SMBs will love next year, it's really that at scale. So you're talking lower prices for better, faster, more accurate and timely personalization, on-device agents that kind of auto-segment audiences in real time and generate like personalized sequences. Think of it like dynamic ideal client profiles that update real time, to your point, not lagged. So, based on that customer intelligence and live behavior. So, as we're getting more sophisticated with the reasoning tools and the agentic AI that has those checks and balances built in with clear human-led goals and guardrails, then you're talking about less lag and pennies per run to achieve these goals. So I think that's what you're going to see within the next year.
Yeah, I have a real case of how this kind of happened. So we use we built our own kind of AI bot on the back end for our teams to use. So they can query it against all of our systems, against all of our integrations, our process results. We have so many different kind of data points. But we what we did was built a bridge saying, hey, we don't want to really release it to customers yet. Let's release it to our own support team, let them use it and try to make them more intelligent and go through it. And it's impossible to train everybody on everything and it's all up to speed. That is, as I've scaled this business from 8 people to close to 100 people right now, that is the hardest thing. It's communication and concise communication. We move fast. So how do you get all that information to the right people at the right time? But what I found was I saw one support ticket coming back and forth and this customer started to go crazy. Like he was very upset, but crazy in a good way for him. I don't blame him. And I'm like, hey, what's going on here? Because I still see the support tickets. I'm still paying attention to what's going on in our customer base. And they're like, why would you say this if you don't have it? And I'm like, hey, where did we get this answer from? And it was from the AI bot on our internal side that even passed through a human check. And that's where I'm saying that this is, to me, so important that there still needs to be a human interface, because even kind of letting them use that as a relay, it wasn't vetted. And that was the learning from us was, hey, if it said that we have a feature, you should be able to click it and go find that feature and confirm this and give the feedback. So of course we went back and trained the model on, no, that doesn't exist. But it's a real case of hallucination, and it was just insanity because it pulled it from a blog post that had nothing to do with us, but it was on our website. And so this is just how it works. And that's, you have to be careful in a sense. And there's no way to test against this, by the way, at least I don't see it in the pre-process. But once it goes out to a customer, it goes out into kind of the real world, that's when the real kind of questions will hit it.
Wouldn't you say that it's because as a leader, you're the kind of person who is always double checking, triple checking, making sure that everything is running exactly the way it should be?
You have to. I don't see, of course, would I love for more people to do it besides me? Of course. But the truth is, at the end of the day, most of the business owners or the people that are really most invested are the ones who are going to go and do that work and ensure quality, right? And so I think most businesses focus on quality. And sometimes, and I don't blame employees. I don't think it's necessarily their fault. If they don't know the answer, they don't know it. But it is up to leadership and management to ensure quality is maintained. And because otherwise people don't know. How do you know if the quality went down if people aren't giving feedback,
If you could bring one person into this conversation, someone who is either influenced or challenged the way that you think about data or innovation, who would it be and what shifted for you after that experience? I'll start with Keryn. You can answer that one first.
I love it. Oh man, there are lots of good ones there. I think Dan Ariely, he was the author of Predictably Irrational a couple decades ago, and a lot of other things as well. But his work on behavioral economics and behavioral intelligence, I think, is very apt to this discussion. People don't behave rationally. But they behave irrationally in predictable ways, right? So being able to apply that to kind of the data side of things, it really influenced how I approach both strategy and data. So just clean data is not enough. Good models are not enough to drive smart decisions. There are emotions involved. There's bias involved. There's friction. There's unexpected constraints. And people are going to take the easiest path. They just are. They're going to take the one with the least friction. So how do we build data solutions to enable that the easiest path is also the right one? How do we, to your earlier point, train people to use AI, because AI is easy to use and it makes you be able to do things much faster, but make sure that they're trained appropriately so that they know how to put the right guardrails in place, so you don't fall into these pitfalls that are brand damaging or lead to a bunch of customer tickets that are avoidable if they know how to correctly source information. How do you teach them to trust but verify? How do you make that as seamless as possible and automate as many elements of that? So again, you make the easiest path the right path. I think that being able to kind of include that kind of thinking into the conversation makes strategy sharper. It makes the analytics more usable. It makes adoption of these transformational tools more frictionless, and it makes the recommendations more effective in the real world, not just kind of on spreadsheets and in the data universe.
And then Brian, what do you have to say to that question?
Yeah. So this might sound a little cheesy, but I'm going to get into it and explain why. So our CEO, his name's Levi Tanasi. He's a serial entrepreneur. And so in a sense, yes, he's the CEO of ZeroBounce, but he's the CEO of many companies. And so he's not necessarily involved in the absolute day-to-day details, whereas I am. And where the mentorship and the innovation side, I am still 7 years later getting nugget after nugget of just gold. I mean, it is pure gold. And one of them that I want to share with everyone, because it has been a key kind of driver and success of ZeroBounce and other companies that are kind of along with us, which is that people are so focused on trying to make the right decision. And one of the things that I see is that they make no decision as a result of that. So either A, making a decision is important and it's okay to be wrong and it's okay to be right. And of course, we're all shooting for right. But what's not okay is to make no decision and to do absolutely nothing and sit in this stalling period or freeze mode. And the next thing you know, 3 weeks later, you're still done nothing. And then 3 years later, you've still done nothing. And one of the things that I can completely apply it to, and what's helped us grow, is we have a concept in our business that is discretionary budget for basically R&D and marketing. We have the understanding we are lighting it on fire. That is the goal. Go light it on fire. And if only 5% of if you get results out of 5 out of 100 things that you tried, that is success. And then drill into that 5% and leave the 95% at home. Just leave it behind you. It's fine. But what I've seen in the past is people are either A, when they do make a decision, they have to be right. And so even if they're wrong, they'll force it as a right. And they'll kind of try to make it. I've seen it. They won't become vulnerable. They won't become accountable to the decision that it's to me is, and by the way, I think this starts with leadership. So if the leaders are listening, it has to be okay to fail. It has to be okay to admit failure. And then it has to be okay to leave it behind. And we're all aligned to that. That's perfectly fine. I have failed more times than I've succeeded, but the success, the way that it's best described by our CEO, and it's just sunk with me, is it is not, there's no magic bullet. There's no single bullet that creates your business to expand it and blow it up, right? It is the sum of 1%ers, 2%ers that move the needle that now compound because you've been building that for years. And so that to me is something I'll never forget, something I think everybody in business should be aware of and try to think about. But there's also two types of companies, ones that want to grow and ones that are just happy the way they are. And that's fine too, but you should be able to identify which one of those you are and communicate that within your teams, because when you have people that innovate, they don't want to be on just the way we are. They want to do different stuff. And so that should be in your hiring process and thought process on either side of that equation.
I think this is absolutely valuable information. I think together we can all grow and become winners, which is so amazing. So thank you for your time, and thank you for joining us on the DesignRush podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Curious about what top brands look for when choosing an agency? Tune in to our latest episodes where we reveal the decision-making secrets of leading brands. Subscribe to the DesignRush podcast and stay ahead of the competition.